no cool magic trick. I can guess what people are going to say to me 99% of the time when I first meet them. So I will introduce myself to someone and I will say, I'm a musician, I'm a pianist. And the response is usually always one of three things. Like, oh, I used to play piano, but I quit. Or it would be, I have a keyboard, but I don't really play it. Or another response would be, man, I wish I took lessons. Like, I wish my parents did that for me. And these three responses have one thing in common. Can anybody guess what that is? What?
They wish.
Yes. Yeah.
They just don't do it.
They don't do it, and it's all regret. Like, I unintentionally, and I feel very bad about it, I unintentionally bring the worst out in people. And it makes me feel really, really bad, because as a musician, that's not what I want to do at all. So, 80% of the people, of all people, at least, these are all my stats in America, who take piano lessons quit within the first 2 years. And a lot of people don't think that's a big deal, but that's an 80% fail rate. Imagine if we applied that same standard to public school teachers, or if we gave that same standard to pilots, you know? Kind of a big deal, I think. So why aren't the vast majority of people who start piano lessons not succeeding? So I think, and I truly, truly think this, playing piano isn't that hard. I think it's easier than playing Fortnite. Because what do you do when you play Fortnite? You sit down and you push a bunch of buttons. What do you do when you play piano? You sit down and you push a bunch of buttons. Really, I don't think that's hard. I think piano is more accessible than people claim it to be. But unlike Fortnite, piano offers something much more in depth, much more vital, and I think that is a fighting chance. And what that fighting chance is we'll talk about later. So let me introduce myself. My name is Sydney. I love video game music. I love piano, and that's why I'm here, and I hope that's why you're here too, because you love video game music. So I teach video game music on the piano, but when I introduce myself, I don't usually like to start with that. I usually like to start with, I am making people's lives richer, fuller, more creative. I'm giving themselves tools and skills and escapism that they're gonna just need. It's absolutely a necessity. So, but when it comes to this necessity, it's because I have one foot in pessimism and one foot in optimism. The pessimistic side of me says that the world is changing in a lot of ways for the worse. Technology is automating a lot of things, which is great. Lifespans are increasing. There's more access to information and technology, but that unintentionally encourages people to become very passive and very lazy and very consumer-oriented rather than creator-oriented. And I think that's so dangerous. But the optimistic side of me, because of all this technology, because of all this access to information and instruments, that more creators are going to have a chance to bloom as well. So my evil plan is to get as many people playing video game music on the piano as possible, not just to play piano, not just to play video game music, but to make them holistically better, stronger people. So I got some questions for you. How many of you play an instrument? I love it, that's great. How many of you play piano? That's a lot of you. And how many of you are music educators? That's a lot, I love that. Okay, great, that's awesome. So I want to start with some stats really quick, not so fun facts. 6 out of 100 people play piano, so this right here is incredibly unusual. The fact that we have so many people playing instruments, so many people playing piano. Pianos used to have a way more public presence, and thanks to the Industrial Revolution, where people were making more money, goods were being produced a lot faster, a lot more affordable. and in ways that make people more accessible. Pianos were in libraries, they were in town hall buildings, they were in museums, they were in hotels, and they were much more prevalent in schools. And the decline happened. We don't see pianos happen so often anymore because of inventions like the player piano, the phonograph, and the radio. Again, great inventions, wonderful for sharing new music, encourages people to become passive. More questions. So how many of you who are not really considered yourself musicians have taken piano lessons before? Okay, got you. Were they self-taught or were they with a teacher if somebody wants to share? Yes?
Teacher when I was a kid and they gave up on me.
They gave up on you? What did you do?
It was so difficult with me with my hands and trying to actually get to do it. I kept on doing everything too hard, and
like literally, like
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
too hard. Okay.
And I wasn't able to do it all.
Okay, I had the same problem. Yeah, I was a piano banger. How many of you did the self-taught route? Anybody? Yes.
I used an iPad, one of the more popular apps.
Okay.
To give it a go, yeah.
Gotcha. And did you find that was successful?
It was helpful.
Okay.
I didn't want to pay the extra money that they wanted to keep progressing.
Sure, that's understandable. A lot of people feel the same way. I think that makes perfect sense. So how many of you who don't play piano want to play piano? Okay. Why? Somebody blurt out a reason. Yeah.
I've always loved the piano. I've always just been able to, like, listening to music and be like, oh my god, it'd be so cool if I could play that.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Absolutely.
And then I try and it's like, vroom, vroom, vroom.
Like what?
Terrible. Like a car.
And anybody else want to share a reason why they like to play? Yes.
It's because like I already cover video game music, but I'd like to actually be able to play an instrument. I do it digitally right now.
Okay, so you produce them and publish them. Okay, so what's the difference between that production for you and the playing for you?
For one thing, I wouldn't have to worry about humanizing it because I'd already be playing it.
Okay, great. So there's actually a production value for you in mind for doing that.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a different reason that they like to share? Yes.
It sounds good in any key.
It sure does. Yeah. Great. That's what I love about piano. Like when they tell me, like, oh, you can't transpose. I'm like, the buttons are all there. You can do it. So basically, a lot of reasons were mentioned here. A lot of people quit piano because the lessons or the songs were boring. I'm sure a lot of you educators know of the Alfred piano series and the Favorite piano adventures. I myself was a Faber kid, but I taught the Alfred series for a couple of years, and they're both fine. They're fine. Not great, they're fine. And another reason people quit, or they have a mean or a dismissive teacher. And frankly, I like mean teachers, because sometimes they can get kids to do stuff, but dismissive, I have no patience for. If a kid brings up a sheet of music to you and says, I really want to learn this, or even adult, it doesn't have to be a kid, I want to learn this, and the teacher's like, no, we don't do that here. That's unacceptable, truly, truly unacceptable, I think. And another reason people quit is they don't stay motivated. And this is something I see all the time. On my YouTube channel, the two top comments I get are, I can't get my hands to play together, or like, I just lost motivation. So that's another problem that needs to be solved as well. And the fourth most common reason I hear people say why they quit piano is because they hated to practice, which I understand. Music can be some of the most self-esteem damaging route you could ever take. But don't tell your students that. You want it to be constructive, even if those moods are down, even if the feeling is down, the emotion's down, you want to make sure they don't hate where they're at or hate what they're doing. Sorry, I lost my spot. So, oops, I think I went too fast. So it's not just those four reasons too. We can blame technology. Like I said before, way back when we had an industrial revolution where machine production was basically exponentially faster, exponentially greater. technology improve, people's life improve. We're in a technological revolution, and I sincerely think that because the world is teeny-weeny now. We hear what's going on in all four corners. We have the internet to know what's going on, and it's such a double-edged sword. Again, like I said, it encourages people to be passive, and that's the last thing we need right now. And it encourages people to be consumers rather than creators, and it encourages ignorance on many subjects. And I don't mean like ignorant, like as in the, not in an insulting way, but it's just like, oh, I don't really need to know this because I can Google this in 5 minutes and then forget the information 5 minutes later. When you have the world in your pocket, why would you do anything, you know? So I want to go back to the 80% fail rate again. So like I said before, imagine that in any other field. Have any of you taught in public schools before? Yeah, I don't have that experience, so what happens to a teacher if 80% of their students fail? Like,
They get fired.
yes, they straight up get fired, but that doesn't happen with piano teachers, thank God, but I don't want that to happen. And the typical response I get to that when I bring up that factoid is, well, piano / music really is a necessity, which I will say, kindly, fight me, it absolutely is. It's absolutely so important. And this is where I kind of get a little fear-mongery right here, I apologize. The consequences of not playing music are a lot bigger than people think. So thanks to technology becoming more frequent, more prevalent, more in our pockets, more automated, making the world smaller, giving us all the information when we want it, how we want it, and how we want it set up, we are going to be losing a lot of low-skill jobs. And that stinks, but I mean, it's happened before. Look at cashiers happening on stores, car washes, and the more we progress in those fields, the more dire it's going to get. And a lot of people are going to miss out because they don't have any other skills to set themselves out from the crowd. And so we're going to lose a lot of low-skill jobs, a lot of boring, repetitive jobs to AI, and we're going to lose a lot of mental well-being. And this one's less obvious, kind of less to wrap your head around. Because I'm on social media a lot. I do it for work, I do it to talk to students, because a lot of the smart game piano community, the Smartist, I talk through Discord or YouTube or Instagram, and it is depressing. There's a lot of people trying to put their best foot forward and just show off the best version of themselves, which is fine, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but we end up comparing ourselves to people a lot. And just wishing and hoping we were better, wish that our Instagram was a little better, wish that our Twitter was a little more on fire. And there's gotta be a way to make yourself that stronger, more capable person with all these changes that are happening. So I sincerely know that it's not just playing piano. You're quite literally changing your brain. I don't know how much of you know about brain anatomy. I'm gonna pretend to know a little bit. Who knows what the corpus callosum is? Yeah, did somebody want to tell me, Rob?
It's the part that connects to your, the part that connects to the sides of the brain.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what connects the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere together. And what's great about piano is that in order to play it, that corpus callosum is going crazy. So when I'm playing something, just like, the corpus callosum is going absolutely nuts. And not a lot of other instruments do the same exact thing. Like, yes, you need to be using 2 hands to play any other instrument, but piano is fabulous because you're playing 2 to 4, or if you're a freak of nature, 5, 6 ideas at once. And it quite literally rewires the brain, changes the brain, and the overall well-being of a person is improved. A lot of people will say, like, cure your anxiety, cure your depression, play piano. No, it doesn't do that. I wish. But it does help. It gives you a fighting chance. If you are constantly exercising your brain, constantly creating rather than consuming, when you do lose your job, when the daddy robots take over, you're going to be great. And it's really giving people a skill such as playing piano or music is really giving them the best chance to live their best life. And that's what I want all educators to keep in mind, that it's like, yeah, we can learn Moonlight Sonata today. I know that's your goal, but my goal as an educator is to give you tools to be a more holistically well person. And I want more people to have that mindset. So here are some successful people. Does anybody know, I kind of gave it away with Ryan, but does anybody know which instruments these people play?
I think that one guy's playing piano.
He sure is.
Yes, loudspeakers.
Einstein played the violin.
And a little bit of piano. A fun fact, Albert Einstein's father, Alfred Einstein, was actually a music theorist. And so Albert was actually quite the successful musician as well. And Bill Gates, does anybody know what Bill plays?
Windows updates.
You're not wrong.
Touche.
It's not piano.
Oh.
That's a good guess.
I thought it was the copy.
Yeah, I know. He actually plays trombone. Yeah, it's very weird. I'm like, okay, Bill, you do you. So, sorry, I'm losing my thought here. And so that's why I teach using video game piano. Like, of all the things that we talked about earlier, wellness, motivation, dismissive teachers, I want to be a teacher that completely embraces what people want to learn. I want to be a teacher that is looking at the student as a whole person and not just a student to get in and out of the door so mom can go take them to McDonald's later. And the kind of person that teaches through that nostalgia factor. Because you're here at MAGWest, you know how powerful video game music is. You absolutely know how powerful it is. So for those of you who had piano lessons, where do you think you would be right now had you been learning video game music way back when? If anybody wants to share. Yes?
I would probably be much better at it because games I was playing at the time were like Pokemon, original Pokemon and Gold and Silver and such, and those were
Those are hard songs too.
well, yeah, but like I could totally learn a simpler version of it as a kid, and it would have been, I probably would have been a lot more interested and may have tried a lot harder.
Right. And for those of you, like, you know, again, who haven't taken piano lessons, would you be taking lessons were that option available? Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, that's my place. So who are some of your favorite artists nowadays, any musical artists?
Big Giant Circles.
I don't know who that is. Who's that?
He's a poster remix composer who does a lot of electronic synth.
Okay. Does he have his foot in the video game world?
Almost all the exposure he has in video game remixing.
Okay.
I know of.
Yeah. See, I mean, video game music is extremely good. Big Giant Circles. I'm gonna look that up later. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Okay. And so all this is why I created Smart Game Piano. People love video game music. That market exists. That market's already there. And I want to get rid of regrets playing piano. I want to stop having people come up to me like, "Hi, I'm Cindy. Oh, hi, I'm full of regret." I'm over it. And I want to strengthen others through playing piano. And I'm not saying there aren't other ways to do that, but I think it is an extremely powerful way, an extremely effectively proven way to do it, and a really fun way to do it. So I forget what the next slide is. My apologies. Oh, okay. That's me, senior year of high school. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. I did the traditional classical route. I did the Favorite Piano series. I took lessons from, a very lovely, kind, sweet Mormon lady. We drove out to the country to go take lessons from her. And she taught me all the classics. But fortunately, her daughter, who is 4 years older than me, was also a giant dork nerd, and was into, she showed me Ichigo's, if anybody remembers. Ichigo's still around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're still doing things, which is weird. I love it. The Piano Collection series, the Final Fantasy Piano Collection series, that blew my mind. And she also showed me a Finale notepad. So I was extremely fortunate to have a teacher who is not dismissive of my giant dork nerd tendencies. I wanted to play Final Fantasy, and she was more open to it because her daughters were also playing Final Fantasy music. And it occurred to me later on in life, way too late, that I had it really, really lucky. I had it super, super lucky. It's because of my teacher and how open she was and how non-dismissive she was of my interests that encouraged me to be a musician, to be a composer, and to be starting Smart Game Piano. So bless her, we need more of her. And I know others aren't so lucky, and that's the whole reason why Smart Game Piano exists. I graduated grad school, summer 2015, and I started Smart Game Piano that year just because I, again, kept running into people like, I'm a musician, I'm full of regrets, and I wanted to change that. So that begs the question, for those of you who are music educators right now, actually, I want to see what kind of educators we have in this room. I know you raised your hand earlier. What kind of a teacher are you?
So K-6, recorders, band, choir, orchestra, and general music.
Okay.
Kindergarten through 6th grade.
So what's your general repertoire like?
Classical, I play oboe.
Okay, gotcha. Another music educator, I know you two are. I'm going to share what you teach, what's your repertoire, how you teach it.
High school band director, retired now, trumpet major.
Okay, gotcha.
Music K through 12, piano lab, guitar lab, courses, and now private piano.
Okay, awesome. And the repertoire, I'm assuming, is mostly classical. So can anybody tell me why we teach through classical music? Yes?
The royalties?
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much, any other reasons why? Yes?
I mean, it has a lot more structure compared to contemporary.
Does it though? I mean, does it? I don't know. Any other reasons? I'm sorry?
There's more materials around it.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's absolutely a lot. Yes, do you?
Well, two reasons. One, it's amazing music, so it's like the book instead of the top.
Yeah.
But
Fair.
the books are also, as a teacher, easy to use.
Yes.
It's just laid out for you. So.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it's music you can play for your grandparents.
Yeah. My grandparents are into classical. Yours are way cooler.
My grandparents.
Yes.
It's music that everyone's typically familiar with, so everyone already knows.
Yes, classical music has turned into memes, basically. But I remember when I was in school studying music, I had a teacher tell me the only reason we teach classical music is, again, royalties, and because it's written down. Seriously, it's written down. You can go to a library. You're not going to get in trouble if you bring it into a classroom and be like, play this. That's it. And I remember she told me that, and I was like, well, what? We can absolutely be writing anything down and teaching that. One of my favorite bosses that I worked for when I was working in a piano studio, when he was in school, he went to his classical piano teacher, and he's a metalhead, so I don't know why he studied piano. It's great. But he was like, we're going to be studying Iron Maiden and Pink Floyd in music schools in the upcoming years. And I'm like, yeah, dude. Like, start that junk. I want to be behind that. So this mindset of why using classical music, I'm not poo-pooing classical music. Absolutely keep up classical music. If students want to learn it, let them learn it. Don't be that dismissive teacher. But there's so many more things out there. I mean, the fact that there's people, going on YouTube and transcribing their favorite songs, getting together, jamming what they love. There's absolutely room for video game music to be written down and documented, and people can pull off a library shelf, literally or figuratively, and learn that way. And I sincerely think that. And there is this unfortunate mindset that only the gifted can play piano or play an instrument. I'm sure you've heard before, like, oh wow, you're so talented. And I'm not saying this to be dismissive or to like, no, I'm wrong. But if you start playing Minecraft for them, they lose their minds sometimes, and they're just like, oh my god, I'll play that. Or if you start playing, I remember last Halloween season, I started playing spooky, scary skeletons. After 15 of them asked me, I'm like, okay, it's time to transcribe that. I don't want to, but I do. Any questions so far? Any stories that people want to share about their musical education experience before I go on? Okay. All right. So how Smart Game Piano works. How many of you have heard of Smart Game Piano before? Okay, a couple of you. Yeah, you learned yesterday. That doesn't count. So all the tutorials are made by me. So, and I get pretty into detail. I use, I'm going to mispronounce it, synesthesia, that, synesthesia, I don't, synesthesia is the other thing, where you taste blue.
It's the same thing.
That's synesthesia.
Yeah, you can like mix up your senses.
That's
Synod, yeah.
Not bad. Okay. I use that, and so I use those colors to show. So for me, I make left hand red and right hand green, so people have no questions about what finger to wear. I fill my hands so people can work on their fingering. That's the hard thing about technology. It's hard to do that physical approach. So I record my hands. And every single tutorial I do, I keep in mind, okay, this person may or may not have any musical experience. This person may or may not know what an arpeggio is or what a trill is. So I keep that in mind to not dumb it down for those who do know what they're doing, but to also make it accessible for people who may not know the jargon, who may not have that experience. There's no schedule to it. People can take a tutorial and do it whenever they want, learn however they want, and I'm not going to be that teacher with a ruler being like, why didn't you learn it? And technology is a tool. I know I was kind of bashing technology earlier, but it can absolutely be a tool and not something that cripples you and turns you just into a consumer. And that's something I try to remind the Smartists and my students too, that you are the master of technology, not the other way around. And it's so easy for us to get bogged down by the technology. Another thing that I love about what Smart Game Piano does is I have one of the least toxic communities on the internet, and I don't know how, but I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful for it. On our Discord, on our Facebook, people are constantly encouraging one another. They're posting videos of their playing, and they'll give tips like, hey, maybe your keyboard's a little bit low, or have you tried slowing it down a little bit? Or have you considered making the left hand a little bit louder in this section? Because discourse and forum is great for education. And piano is such a lonely, lonely endeavor. For those of you who know, you're by yourself making all the music. So the more we can use social media to not compare ourselves, but to share our progress, the better. And I believe this affects the total well-being, because the person can take this freedom of no schedule, take this freedom of I am in charge of how I'm learning this. I get to see all these details. I get to ask for help if and when I need it. This is going to change how they look at music, change how they look at themselves, and change how they look at themselves in the context of the world. I know it sounds so cheesy. So here's an example of a tutorial that I do in case those who don't know. I realized I forgot to plug in the sound. Oops. So that doesn't matter. I don't like my voice. You ever hear your voice and you're like, how do I have friends?
When I hear my voice in a video, I usually find it's a little lower or a little higher than I could.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh my gosh, stop. So I feel that way. So this is how my tutorials are laid out. You can see the note names, you can see the colors there, you can see when the notes line up, and most importantly, I think, is you can watch the fingering. I will talk about fingering issues, I will talk about counting, because rhythm is so important. A lot of people like to ignore rhythm. And I also talk about certain exercises that you can do. At the end of my videos, I offer little exercises at the end, like, hey, if you're struggling with this section, this is how you do. Like, for example, like I'll teach them how to do a 2 against